Good morning, Year 8. It's been a long time since I've done one of these videos. It's nice to talk to you again. I hope you found the assessment week not too difficult. We're able to get a break last week and make an amazing video and had a good rest over the weekend. So your assignment, or really your feedback and reflection task this week, is based on this really quite wonderful book which I bought recently. What Happened Where in the World? It says it's history as you've never seen it before, which is very exciting for me at least. Now, what this book does is creates timelines based around maps, and it's really fantastic. For example, this is the map for empires in general. So the British Empire is on here, and also all world empires are on here. There's also some information you'll see at the bottom about the scramble for Africa and things like that we've studied. And there's lots of information all around about different parts of empires. I don't know if that's round the right way for you. Apologies if it's backwards. But you get the idea. It talks about kind of colonies that were formed by different countries. All sorts of different things on here. And it's really interesting. It's really fantastic. And I found it very enjoyable to kind of read this and look at it. But it also struck me that this would be something really useful for you to do to give yourself a kind of overall picture of what we've studied this year about the British Empire, about the transatlantic sugar trade and the enslavement of African people, and about African kingdoms and migration. And you could put that all not only in a timeline so you can get a clear idea of chronology when things happened, but also you could put that on a map so you kind of know where these things are happening. It gives you a much kind of bigger picture. We can also, I thought it would be a nice opportunity to do something a bit more fun and creative, because you can add pictures to different events to help you remember them. I've told you about this before. It's a great revision technique called dual coding. So that's what you're going to do this week. You're going to create a timeline over a world map, just like this one, to help you to reflect and summarize everything that you've learned in Year 8 history. So I'll show you Microsoft Teams and the assignment I've set up so you can see how this works. I'm going to make my camera a little bit smaller because I don't need to be that big now. Before anyone asks, yes, this is or was my dog. This is a dog called Baloo. I have him or put him as my background because unfortunately he died recently, and he was very dear to me. But he had a very good life. He was 16 when he died, so he did very, very well for himself. Before anybody asks, that's Baloo. Okay, let's go on to Microsoft Teams. I'm going to click on Year 8. You might need to remind yourself, refamiliarize yourself with how we used to do this. We'll just ignore Mr. Whitehouse for now. Then you are going to go on to assignments. You're going to click on History Year 8 Reflection Week Tasks. I'm going to go onto student view so it looks like it does for you. And you'll see all of the instructions that I've just given you here. So I'd really encourage you to read through those. And as you will see, I'm going to tweet the best examples and award house points. Now, that might not sound that exciting, but actually I've got well over 1,000 followers on Twitter. Some of them are teachers, some of them are historians, some of them are politicians. So actually loads of people are going to see your work and we'll be able to praise it and talk about how great it is if I do tweet it. Now, it says somewhere along here about going to watch a video for some examples. Well, you're watching that video now, but obviously there's not a link in there at the moment. Also as well, I've just given you 3 different options for how you can do this task. The first is to print off the example that I'll show you in a minute, the map outline, and do your task on there. The second is to draw the map out, the map of the world, if you don't have a printer. If you struggle with printing, you can put your piece of paper on your screen and trace it. But as I say, do not press hard. You need to do this with a pencil. Do not do it with a pen. Do it with a pencil, preferably a blunt pencil or not really sharp, otherwise you might damage your screen. And do not press hard or you would damage your screen. I don't want to get into trouble with your parents or guardians for breaking your device. The third option, and to be honest, the trickier one, I wouldn't do this if you can avoid it, is to create your map/timeline on Microsoft Teams or on your own copy of Word. That will be quite tricky. It will move around lots. I'd try and draw it out if you can, but if you must, that is an option. So I'm going to take you through the documents that I've uploaded to help you. Now, the document that you are going to work on is this one, the Year 8 Maps example. No, it's not. That's not correct. That's the example that I'll show you in a minute. The one that you are going to work on is Year 8 Maps and Support Doc. So this you can see is the outline of the document or outline of the world map, which you can use. Underneath, I've given you some examples or some things to help. So this map shows you how Britain's empire grew over time. If you look at the key here, you can see all the different dates and periods of time which different parts of the empire were added to the British Empire, and they're all in different colours to help you. So that's going to help you with your timeline, really. You're also going to want to go and look at your work that you've done previously in your booklets. Remember, if you click on in our team, if you click on class documents or class files, you can find all of the old booklets and knowledge organizers for cycle A, B, C, and D in there, which will also help you with dates as well. The final picture on here, which I thought I'd add, probably familiar to you. It was on the front of our cycle A workbook this year, but it shows the British Empire at its height. This was actually a map that was a very famous map that was shown in a newspaper. I think it was in the Daily Mail in the turn of the century, or 1886. There you go. And it's got all sorts of wonderful pictures around the outside, which might kind of stimulate some thought and give you some inspiration for pictures for your own map, or equally, you could copy these as well. So use these to help you. The last, a reminder, if you are doing it on Microsoft Teams, again, I'd encourage you not to click on Edit Document and open in Desktop app to edit it on your own computer, or edit it on Microsoft Teams, okay? Anyway, there is one more bit of help that I've given you, and I already showed you before. I've just given you an example of what this might look like. So I've made one. So you'll see that I've added these kind of men holding flags in places where Britain had colonies, parts of the British Empire. I've added the triangular trade here. So you remember we studied that when we learned about the sugar trade, enslaved Africans going from the west coast of Africa to the Caribbean, raw materials, sugar, also other things like tobacco and cotton as well, going back to Britain, which are made into manufactured goods, which are traded with the African people who were capturing slaves. For example, there's a gun here, but also things like furniture and clothes were also traded, machines. I've also added information here about Rhodesia, which of course was a colony that was colonized by Cecil Rhodes, now today called Zimbabwe, named after, of course, Great Zimbabwe, which we learned about. And then that leads me on to kind of African kingdoms. So I've added a couple of African kingdoms here as well. Mapungubwe, the Mali Empire with Mansa Musa, when we learned about that when we did about Timbuktu, are also on here. So I think you could do a significantly better job than this, much more colourful, much more interesting, much more events, but that's just to give you an idea. Now, when you have finished your work, of course, if you've done it on Microsoft Teams, you can just submit on here. But if you haven't, and I would encourage you to do this, and you've drawn it out yourself, your map, or you printed it off and drawn over the map, well, then you're going to need to upload your work onto Microsoft Teams. So take a photo with a phone maybe, and email it to yourself, put it on your computer or device, and then you can upload it to Microsoft Teams. If you need instructions for how to upload it, Well, click on this link here that my cursor's hovering over now, and I explain how to do that on Microsoft Teams. Okay, so your task for this week, just to reiterate, is to create a timeline map of everything you have learned about the British Empire, the sugar trade, African kingdoms, and migration through time. So basically what you've learned this year. Oh, and one last thing that we've studied, which isn't on there, of course, is British India as well in focus. You have until next Monday to do this, but really you should be doing this week, so it should be done well before Friday. Okay, I look forward to seeing your examples. Thanks, Sheree.